It is indeed a shocking and disturbing chapter of history, one that has left deep scars but is rarely discussed today. During the 19th and early 20th centuries in Florida, there were horrific reports that black children were used as bait for alligator hunting. This practice was part of the broader dehumanization of black people during the era of slavery and Jim Crow laws. The idea that human lives were seen as expendable in such a brutal manner is horrifying. The U.S.'s current efforts to downplay or erase these and other uncomfortable truths about black history are troubling. Many black people living in Florida today are unaware of this part of their history, a result of deliberate suppression of these events in textbooks and educational institutions. It's an alarming reminder of how historical narratives can be controlled and manipulated. But why were black children used as bait for alligators in the first place? Alligator hunting was a lucrative trade at the time. The skins were in high demand for making leather products, and hunters sought the most effective ways to catch them. Tragically, using black children as bait was seen as a practical but inhumane solution. This speaks volumes about the racial attitudes of the time. Black lives were treated as disposable commodities. So, why do so many people still not know about this? Part of the reason is that these stories have been deliberately erased or softened over time. Florida's education system, like many others across the U.S., has historically minimized or omitted the darker aspects of racial history. Additionally, some historical evidence has been lost or destroyed, making it easier for such stories to fade from public memory. Florida and the wider U.S. must confront these historical truths rather than hide from them. Erasing black history does a disservice not only to those who suffered but to future generations who deserve to know the full truth about their country's past. Back then, when settlers arrived in new territories, particularly wealthy white settlers, they viewed the land as a vast, untapped resource that they could exploit without consequence. They believed there was an abundance of everything: land, wildlife, and natural resources, and felt entitled to take as much as they wanted. Many of these lands, however, originally belonged to black communities. But the disregard for black lives and property at the time meant that these people were often displaced without a second thought. This mindset of entitlement not only led to the exploitation of land but also to the near destruction of local ecosystems. One animal that suffered greatly was the alligator, which was driven to the brink of extinction. Alligator hunting became a popular activity, not just for survival but for profit, almost like a sport. The allure of making money from selling alligator skins, which were highly sought after for leather products, drew many people into the trade. However, hunting alligators was fraught with danger. These creatures were fierce, and many hunters risked severe injuries or even death. Losing an arm or one's life was a very real possibility during these fatal encounters. Despite these risks, the promise of wealth from alligator skin products made the trade enticing for those willing to brave the dangers. The drive to exploit not only the land but also its wildlife shows just how little regard there was for the environment, indigenous peoples, and black communities during that period. But things took a truly horrific turn in the early 1900s, as the world glimpsed one of the darkest and most disturbing chapters in history. Shocking reports began to surface about the horrifying practice of using black children as bait to lure alligators. This gruesome tactic, which aimed to make alligator hunting more efficient, exposed the extent to which black children were exploited for profit. While this practice wasn't widely documented, largely due to efforts to erase it from history, there are pieces of evidence in old newspapers and postcards suggesting that it occurred in parts of the American South. As alligator hunting surged in popularity in the early 20th century, driven by the lucrative trade of alligator skins, hunters sought methods to simplify the process. Unfortunately, this resulted in the tragic use of black children as bait, revealing a chilling disregard for human life in the name of profit. This version presents the information in a more detailed and structured manner, while remaining mindful of the sensitivity and historical context of the subject. Hunters would allegedly take black children and place them in pens or tie them near alligator dens to lure the reptiles, making the hunting process quicker and more efficient. Some argue that this horrific practice of using black children as bait is hard to believe due to the lack of extensive documentation. However, this absence of records is largely because efforts were made to erase it from history. By the end of this video, we'll share some compelling evidence to prove that this practice, known as gator bait, did occur, so be sure to stick around. The deliberate erasure of this dark chapter only makes it more challenging to fully comprehend the scope of what happened. Yet, fragments of evidence, such as old newspapers and postcards, shed light on this unsettling reality. These artifacts offer chilling glimpses into a time when black children were exploited in unimaginable ways for alligator hunting, particularly in parts of the American South. Newspaper reports from the early 1900s provide disturbing insights into how children were used as bait to attract alligators, underscoring the inhumanity and the extent of racial violence that occurred during that period. Headlines and articles, though scarce, narrate the horrifying accounts of black children being used as bait for alligator hunting. These reports expose a shocking disregard for human life, where hunters prioritized convenience over the safety and dignity of innocent children. Since black children were born into slavery according to U.S. laws at the time, their exploitation as bait was not viewed as unethical by the prevailing standards of that era. Postcards, once a popular medium for communication and documentation, also serve as grim evidence of this gruesome practice. Some postcards even depicted scenes of alligator hunting, showing children placed dangerously close to alligator-infested waters. These images, combined with the disturbing reports in newspapers, illustrate a chilling reality where the exploitation of black children was seen as acceptable in the pursuit of profit and efficiency. The use of children as bait for alligator hunting reveals a deeper, more pervasive issue about societal values at the time, where human life, especially black life, was commodified and devalued. This practice reflects the broader racial attitudes and dehumanization that were rampant during that dark chapter of American history. It reflects a deeply disturbing disregard for the lives of black children, highlighting the systemic racism and dehumanization that plagued the American South in the early 1900s. The fact that some hunters could view these children as expendable tools for their own profit exposes a much broader societal issue, one that extends far beyond alligator hunting. What makes this history even more unsettling is Florida's concerted effort to erase this cruelty from official records, as if trying to hide the dark past rather than confront it. As we discuss this forgotten chapter, we want to remind you to support us by subscribing to our channel and giving this video a like. Your support helps us continue sharing important stories like these and building a community dedicated to uncovering hidden truths. Now, back to our topic. The intentional removal of such information from historical records is a clear attempt to whitewash the past and minimize the recognition of the atrocities committed. However, it's crucial that we confront these dark moments in history, not only to honor the memory of those who suffered but also to prevent the repetition of such egregious acts. By remembering and acknowledging these events, we foster a collective commitment to justice, equality, and truth. While the practice of using children as bait for alligator hunting remains one of the most objectionable chapters in history, acknowledging and learning from these painful truths is essential. By confronting the darker aspects of our past, we can work toward creating a more just and equitable future, ensuring that such atrocities are never repeated. Now, you might wonder, if Florida made efforts to erase this history, how is it still known today? The answer lies in the persistence of fragmented historical records and the resilience of the stories passed down through generations. Even as some states tried to suppress these narratives, traces of this disturbing practice can still be found in old newspapers, postcards, and oral histories. Moreover, the broader societal context, such as the Jim Crow laws, provides a backdrop for understanding how deeply ingrained racial violence and exploitation were in the southern United States. The Jim Crow laws, in place from the 1870s to the 1960s, were state and local laws designed to enforce racial segregation across the South. These laws effectively stripped African Americans of the rights that the Reconstruction Amendments had granted after the Civil War. Jim Crow laws maintained a rigid racial hierarchy, subjecting black individuals to systemic humiliation, segregation, and economic marginalization. Under such laws, practices like using black children as bait could thrive in a society that viewed black lives as expendable. By understanding the historical context of the Jim Crow era, We gain insight into how deeply entrenched racial injustice was and how crucial it is to preserve these difficult stories as a reminder of the fight for equality and justice. These discriminatory Jim Crow laws extended well beyond public spaces, infiltrating every aspect of life, from education to employment, solidifying a social structure of inequality. In this environment of systemic racism, dehumanizing narratives like the Gator bait legend found fertile ground to spread, reinforcing a culture of racial hatred and prejudice. The story of Gator bait, rooted deeply in racism, had devastating consequences for African American communities during the Jim Crow era. Beyond the immediate horror of the practice itself, its perpetuation contributed to further marginalization and reinforced negative stereotypes about Black people, especially children. This narrative contributed to a culture of fear, where the safety and well-being of African American children were constantly threatened by a society that viewed them as expendable. But what led to such brutality against Black children? The answer lies in how deeply entrenched racism was in both society and media. Dehumanizing portrayals of Black children in the media and popular culture fueled racial hatred and justified violent acts against them. This harmful portrayal not only dehumanized Black children but also made it easier for society to ignore the injustices African Americans faced. The legend of Gator bait, while not the sole contributor to racial violence, played a significant role in perpetuating a cycle of dehumanization that took decades to confront. When Black children are depicted as less than human in the media, it distorts how society perceives them, leading to dangerous outcomes, such as the tragic killings of Black children in recent cases involving police. This dehumanization goes beyond individual incidents. It affects society's overall perception of African Americans, making it easier to justify systemic violence and discrimination. By portraying Black children in a negative light, the media has historically shaped public opinion in harmful ways, furthering racial prejudice. The portrayal of Black children as expendable or dangerous has had severe, long-lasting consequences, not only reinforcing stereotypes but also paving the way for more violence and marginalization. It's crucial that we understand and confront these portrayals, as they have shaped the narrative surrounding African American communities for far too long. The dehumanizing portrayal of Black children as Gator bait has contributed to justifying violence and discrimination against African Americans, creating an environment where society can easily turn a blind eye to the injustices they face. Instead of expressing empathy, some white people have dismissed the Gator bait narrative as nothing more than a fabricated tale. However, the state of Florida took a pivotal step in 2020 by confirming the disturbing reality behind these claims. A significant move came from the University of Florida, which officially banned the use of the term Gator bait, a decision that shed light on its existence. As with many things, a ban is typically implemented when something is actively happening, further acknowledging that the concept of Gator bait was not a mere myth. The controversy surrounding the term has long been debated, with some insisting it was nothing more than an unfounded story. Despite these dismissals, the University of Florida's action to ban the term served as a concrete recognition of the harsh truth. The banning of Gator bait stands as powerful evidence of the cruelty faced by Black people during this era. It serves as a reminder of how deeply ingrained racism was, not only in hunting practices but in how society treated and viewed Black children. Acknowledging these painful chapters in history is essential for healing, learning, and ensuring that such dehumanization is never repeated. Efforts to erase this dark chapter of history can be seen as an attempt to dismiss the sacrifices and suffering of the Black community. Did you know about the brutal practice that occurred in Florida? Is it right for the U.S. to censor and erase this part of history, or do you believe you deserve to know the truth? Why do you think states are trying to remove this history? Is it to forget about the painful past, or to erase the evidence of cruelty once inflicted by white people? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Now that you know Florida made attempts to hide the proof, does it still appear as an anti-racist state to you? Would you like to see more videos from us? If so, please support us by subscribing, hitting the bell icon for updates. Don't forget to check out our other videos on the channel as well. This call to engage the audience allows for continued dialogue on this important topic. while encouraging viewers to reflect on the broader implications of erasing historical truths.